Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 3rd of October. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by a full squad. First of all, Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Good to be here.
Fantastic. And Stevie Clifford also joins us. How are we doing, Stevie?
Good morning, everyone. I am bright and breezy and delighted to be here to talk about more joyful Rangers happy news.
Well, there is a bit of news, of course, the club looking for a new manager. A bit of news with regards to potential candidates in the press yesterday, which we'll touch on. Before we do that, folks, you can see the little ticker below. We've got an offer on the website just now. You can head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe if you want to sign up to one of two brilliant offers we've got on just now. You can sign up for an entire year for just £18, or you can sign up for 4 months for just £4. So great offers to take advantage of. Mike seamlessly done. News yesterday, of course. Let's talk Rangers. First of all, we'll touch on Stephen Davis because he has been placed in interim charge of the club after the dismissal of Michael Beale on Sunday evening. He gave an interview to Rangers TV yesterday, and he said that I feel very honoured. The call came out of the blue. I certainly wasn't expecting it. He says, obviously, it's not a position we'd like to be in. We're disappointed with where we're at this minute in time, but I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's been a really crazy 24 hours. I got the phone call late last night to let me know Michael and his staff are leaving. We then had a chat, and the club wanted me to come in and lead the team alongside Alex, Stephen, and Brian. To be honest, management is something I have considered for further down the line. I didn't expect to get this opportunity. It didn't even cross my mind, but it was an opportunity I just couldn't turn down. He was also asked about, later on in that interview, I would just like to try and repay the trust the club have shown in putting me in this position. Ultimately, you have to be your own person, but of course I worked with some incredible managers in my career. Walter at this club, it was a great honour to play under him for so many years and have the relationship I had with him. At Southampton, I played under some great managers as well, in Mauricio Pochettino and Ronald Koeman. Internationally with Martin O'Neill, whom I have a very close relationship with. I've been very fortunate to play under a number of really good managers and pick up a lot of things from them as well over the years. I'll try and implement some of those things they probably showed me, but it's a short-term approach at this minute in time. He talks about other things in that interview as well, Joshua, but I'll be interested to see how he gets on. I think it will be a short-term appointment alongside Alex Rae there, of course, Stephen Smith, Brian Gilmore, and Colin Stewart assisting them as well. A big test for him on Thursday night, though. I did ask Chris yesterday if he foreseen any potential major changes to the team. I think he might be a little bit hamstrung with regards to injuries and what he can possibly do. But what are you expecting with Stephen Davis in charge?
Yeah, I think you're right. He is hamstrung with injuries because you look at the fact that Jack and Ridvan came off at halftime in midweek, and you looked at what Michael Beale then had to turn to on the bench, and it wasn't much. The last injury update he gave, which was I think it was before the Aberdeen game on the Friday, said that you might see Raskin and Dowell, I think, before the St Mirren game, but there was no mention of the Aris game within that. So I think Davies will hope there's maybe a surprise within there, and he can get one or two bodies back. But options are limited, especially when you look at the forward areas. Kemar Roof, something that kind of went under the radar at the weekend. There's no serious injury for him. Michael Beale confirmed that actually before, I think it was on the BBC before the game. So I guess that gives you a little bit more depth maybe heading into the weekend. Davies obviously is a rookie manager, and I think the team behind him is clearly built with that in mind. But it's also, for me, Derek, a team that's clearly built with the fact that this might be longer than 2 games. And I think all the noises coming out of Rangers are about the right appointment rather than the quick one. That there's risk attached to that because Stephen Davis, we can get into, he's a hugely popular figure, and I think that will buy them goodwill. I think he's not experienced as a manager, but he's experienced as a leader, which is a slightly different thing. But it's not as if he's captained his country for a long time, UK record cap holder, so respected for a reason. So I think he'll have a lot of translatable skills into this situation, but it also will be entirely new. But I guess with a new manager in these type of situations, you always hope that it just gives people a bit of refreshment. I think you can see from even the mood that will be in the comments, the mood in podcasts, there'll be more anticipation looking towards the game because the mood has been so bad in the last few weeks. And that will extend into Davies' job, and I think it will help him. But in terms of what he has to work with, in terms of are we going to see, new ideas, I don't know, because it is so limited. And I guess over the next couple of games, it's about getting a positive result over in Cyprus. Rangers definitely need, just in context of their season, cannot afford to fall further behind away at what will be a difficult game against St Mirren, who started the season really well in Paisley. So it's going to be a difficult task, and he's not got too many players to do it. But yeah, as I say, no experience as a manager. He is an experienced leader, and I think that will work in his favour.
Before we come to you, Stevie, pertinent question here from Aldo this morning. Where is the chicken?
I honestly don't know how that happened, but and I've not even heard it, so I've swapped my mic around. But what I will say on the whole Stephen Davis thing is, and I'll be quite blunt here, these players better not consider letting him down in the absolute slightest. Stephen Davis is Rangers royalty, and as far as I'm concerned, and if they don't run through brick walls for him and give absolutely everything, then their patience with this squad already is wearing thin. But they better get their proverbial fingers out when it comes to being under Stephen Davis in these next couple of games at least. Further to that, with regards to what he can do and changes wise, I think, I echo what Joshua says. There's not a lot he can do, but I was thinking, with Ryan Jack injured and that, perhaps John Souttar might come back into the team. He's got the option of going to 3, or John Souttar can play in midfield, which he done very effectively for Hearts at times. So there is that option. And then secondly, Kemar Roofe. I was shocked, Derek, to find out that it was nothing serious and he's back so quickly. Very Kemar Roofe-like. But unfortunately, the options up front are so desperately thin, and also on form of Dessers and things. I don't think you can play Cyril Dessers at the moment in time, the way that the crowd are with him, which I don't particularly agree with. I don't mind fans having a say when it comes to players at the end and booing and stuff like that as a collective, but individually to single out guys and boo them when they're coming off and that, I don't agree with. I think that becomes really difficult. I've been there when it's happened to Bert Conterman, and players never, ever really recover. And I don't think Cyril Dessers will recover at Rangers. It will take a hell of a turnaround. It can happen very quickly, but with that in mind, I wouldn't be playing him in these games coming up. I just don't think it works for anybody. If Kemar Roofe is fit, I would play him, and then I would look elsewhere also. So yeah, we've not got a lot of options, but I would be, I don't know if Nico Raskin is able to come back. I don't know if Kieran Dowell's close to coming back. So maybe there's a few more options ahead of Sunday more than Thursday. But as I said to you, Derek, my patience with this group of players is running extremely thin. I absolutely recognise that Michael Beale had to go. I think that's clear. But this is the same group of players, a core group of players that continually let this club down, continually underperform, and continually make the same mistakes and blame it on others. Attitudes of certain people in that squad, senior players in that squad, and the way they speak to people and the way they answer questions and things like that is a complete disgrace at times. And I've had enough. So when you look at the attitude of Jack Butland when he speaks to the press compared to the arrogance of some others, so I'm more than a little bit upset with this group of players. And as far as I'm concerned, they've got a whole lot to prove, because we put them on such a pedestal, Derek. We give them all the adulation, we give them everything, and we laud after them as Rangers players. And we put them on this pedestal of heroes and greatness. And the stuff that they have served up is absolutely ridiculous. So, yes, Michael Beale had to go, but this group of players for me are very much on notice, and it's about time that they stood up and represented the badge the way they should.
Yeah, interesting points there. I'm intrigued to see what Stephen Davis does. I think when you mentioned John Souttar there, I think that is an option to him up front is certainly an area of the pitch that has been concerning ever since the summer. Well, I say the summer, last season as well, the tail end of the Seville season, also when Rangers had no centre forwards. They haven't really addressed it for some time now, and they're going to have to do that. Cyril Dessers, like you, Stevie, I was thinking of this last night. I don't see a way back. It's very, very difficult to come back from that, what he's experiencing at the moment. Whether Rangers can get some sort of transfer fee for him in the upcoming windows remains to be seen. But as he it seems bizarre to be writing him off so early into the season. Josh, I know we're going slightly off-piste here, but does Cyril Dessers have a future, an immediate future on Thursday and beyond?
I agree that it's so difficult when you get to this stage at a venue like Ibrox, because there's just so much pressure on every touch you make. If you look at his performance at the weekend, he has two opportunities within the first half you'd expect him to do a little bit better with. Then even when the ball's going up to him and it's not sticking, or maybe he's running in behind, it must be difficult to play in that atmosphere. And I think he's just not been able to show yet whatever attracted Michael Beale and others to bring him to the club. He's not been able to show that consistently yet. And then you have people make their mind up about you, and it's so hard to come back from it. There is examples of players who have. John Lundstram I think it's to a lesser extent. I don't think there was as much anger directed towards him, but there was still a feeling that this hasn't worked, and a lot of frustration with him. And you can go back to players like, who I wasn't around to witness, but I'm told constantly about, like Mark Hateley and others who have turned their Rangers career around. But there's a lot of people who haven't as well, and it's what, as Stevie says, I think it's a difficult place to try and do that. When you look though, Derek, at the bench that Rangers had at the weekend, to read out the bench, they had Scott Wright, who obviously came on and got sent off, Barisic, Lovelace, Suter, Sterling, Balogun, McCrory, Rice, and McKinnon. That's not a bench that screams out a lot of options to me. There is the option of throwing in young players over the course of the next week, but I guess there's a bit of a risk around that as well. If you put Zach Lovelace in, is that really the environment you want to be putting a 17-year-old into?
I think he would thrive. I think he would thrive, to be honest.
Well,
I don't think he's. Put it this way, I think I would rather have Leon Balogun up front than Cyril Dessers at this moment in time.
Can I just throw something in here?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Derek just said. Who would you rather have at this moment in time?
Yeah.
And what's the worst that can happen with a young fella going up front like Zach Lovelace, that he doesn't perform well and has a kind of dodgy game? He would still, in my opinion, offer more than what Cyril Dessers is at this moment in time because of the situation. He, I don't know if people paid particular attention to when they were walking round at the end, and obviously there was a lot coming from the stands, but he looked like a broken man. And well done for him for at least having the balls to walk round, because other senior members didn't. They walked straight up the tunnel, and he walked round with other members, John Lundstram and things like that. Zach Lovelace was one of them that did walk round. As far as I'm concerned, age isn't a barrier at this point when you've got so little options. See if the young guy is as good as what people are making out. And I'm not sure that he is ready as yet, but we see youngsters getting the option everywhere in Europe, and Barcelona playing 16-year-old boys and all this kind of stuff. Yep. Why can't we give Zach Lovelace a chance in a team at the moment that's looking for a spark, that's looking for excitement, that's looking for something? And by the way, the crowd will protect them. They will gravitate towards a youngster like that playing just because they realise the situation it's in. So see, as far as I'm concerned, if you gave me the option right now on Thursday and Sunday, is it Zach Lovelace or is it one of the senior strikers and Dessers, etc., then Zach Lovelace is getting a chance for me, purely because as well, we need to do something different. And the other side of it is these senior guys have done nothing to warrant their place anyway. So why not throw in a youngster and see what you can do?
Yeah, differing opinions on Lovelace there. Lots of points been coming in. Thomas, though, saying Lovelace far too raw. He's nowhere near ready, he says. But like you, Stevie, the alternative right now is someone that is devoid of confidence, can't hit a barn door. His second touch is a tackle. He needs taking out the firing line for me. And Rangers don't have a lot of options at this moment in time. Dave Fulton with the point. Daniil was back at the training centre yesterday. Fingers crossed he can play on Thursday with a Zorro mask. And Terry Monroe going for a Lovelace and Sima up front option. Let's move away from on-field matters. Rangers, of course, looking for a new manager, and we will touch on as well the importance of a sporting director. Joshua's got a great piece on the website on that to go and check out, folks. A lot of names obviously being linked to the club. The prominent one is Kevin Muscat. The news is he's reportedly stalling on a new contract with the Japanese side, Yokohama Marinos. He's the early front runner to take over from Michael Beale. It's claimed that he would be interested in speaking to Rangers and could be available for a reduced compensation package of around 2 months' wages should Rangers look to appoint the former Ibrox fullback. Lots of comments coming in with regards to that. There was another bit of news I seen yesterday. I don't know how true this is, I've got to say, from TNT Sports in Argentina, who say, according to Sky, Marcelo Gallardo, formerly of River Plate, is one of the 3 candidates Rangers have to replace Michael Beale as coach. He was a name that you mentioned when we were on Sunday night, Stevie. Let's take Muscat for a start. Lots of comments with regards to him coming in. Denzel says, I'm a bit concerned about the momentum but building behind Muscat. Nothing against him. He might be great, but it's too much like the process by which Gio and Beale arrived. So there's Dean Henderson as well saying, why are we linked so heavily with Muscat? Understand the club links, but he's currently doing a very good job, and I think it would be a step in the wrong direction. Don't know if you know too much about the work that he's done over there in Japan and similarly in Australia, Joshua. For me, it smacks of Ange. He took over from Ange, of course, both at Melbourne and Yokohama. Ange has done well. He's formerly a Rangers player. Maybe
that's Johnny's ringtone, just so everyone knows it's not mine.
A bit of Guns N' Roses.
Give me a fright. Give me a real fright. But anyway, to Muscat, yeah, I mean, I think my gut instinct in this situation, Derek, and as I say, I think the message and the messages, the noises from other variety of sources has been more about getting the right appointment rather than the quick one. Rangers cannot be in this situation this time next year. And we're almost in the exact same situation as last year because Rangers go away to the Netherlands and have a 4-goal defeat in a European competition that completely sucks the life out of everything because of the manner of it. And thereafter that, they suffer an Old Firm defeat. And although this season, the 1-0 defeat wasn't as heavy on the scoreline as it was last season when they lost 4-0 in the first Old Firm fixture of the season away from home, it was just as bad. It was arguably worse because of the context, as we discussed the other day. My instinct and my gut is I'd like to see people linked who don't have Rangers connections. I think, as the comment said a second ago, the last 2 managers have. I think there was other appeals outside of that, but I think it was largely their connections with the club that got them into the, I guess, the sphere, whether it be Gio's history with the club. And obviously he had that backdrop of he's won the league in Feyenoord with Feyenoord and done a really good job there in a more difficult league. So there was the appeal of that. Beale was given the job because he was an exciting coach going out on his own, but he wouldn't have got that job had he not been involved with Rangers in the first place, had he not had those connections with the boardroom in the first place, had he not been known to the fan base before this. Muscat, I've watched little bits of his football like everyone else. I think there's an appeal to that style of football, and we can get into more of that over the kind of coming days. What type of manager do Rangers need to appoint, and what do the last 2 kind of managers tell us about that? And certainly, I think what is a real important thing that we can't overlook is how important now style is, as well as winning, but how important style is, because how much over the last couple of years has the complaints been about style and about what people are watching. But yeah, I'd like to see I'm more inclined to gravitate towards names who don't have Rangers past, because I do believe that although Scottish football is unique to adapt to, it's not exceptional to adapt to. I think that the most successful Rangers manager, yes, if they understand the club in the first place, that's an added bonus. But how do you get fans on side? How do you really make history at a club like this? By producing the best football team possible, the team most capable of winning as many games as possible. So that's just my gut instinct, drifting towards not only people who have been linked towards Rangers, although Muscat, I think, does have appeal over his style of play, But who's going to be the best option regardless of links to Rangers? And I think that will ultimately, maybe there's a little bit more short-term pain in that sense because the manager will have to adapt. But again, you can't be in this situation next October, November, as you have been for the last 2 years.
Yeah, other names that have been linked, the AZ Alkmaar boss I seen yesterday, apparently, according to reports, he'd been recommended to Rangers by Ronald De Boer and Arthur Newman. The Bluebells are blue podcast says we need the AZ lad. This Muscat shout is ludicrous, he says. And Hugh, with a point here, he says Pascal Janssen from AZ Alkmaar has pedigree. He's got them, I believe, second in the Eredivisie at this moment in time. He's been there since 2020. Did a decent job, I think, at AZ Alkmaar. That side, I don't watch much of their football. I know they get put out by West Ham in the Conference League last season. But, Stevie, some of the names that have been suggested thus far, are they anyone that surprises you? Or do you have an inclination towards one at this point in time?
We spoke about this, Derek, didn't we? I'm not going to give them the kiss of death. So I can only kind of talk about the guys that have been mentioned. Kevin Muscat. There is a truth to the fact that Kevin Muscat would want this job. I think there's a truth to the saying that Kevin Muscat would walk here. So I think that's a really viable option for the club if that's a route they decide to go down. I think they will ultimately end up speaking to him. Frank Lampard's name. Frank will want this job. He wanted it last time. Undoubtedly.
What do you think about that, Stevie? Listen, I like Frank Lampard. He did a great job at Derby. His first stint at Chelsea, I thought he did well. I know Chelsea are a bit of a basket case at this point in time when he came back, but he was a bit of a joke figure in the end when he went back there.
Well, as I was about to say, I think he done all right at Derek at Derby. I think he done well at Chelsea in his first spell. He was kind of a bit harshly kind of dealt with.
Yeah.
I would write off his second spell completely because Chelsea are an absolute mess, and you've seen that even then it's taken Pochettino time with the turnover and the way they're run is just an absolute mess. So there was nothing he could really do other than be a figurehead for the fans and things like that. I know that the Chelsea fans don't hold that against him either. Everton, he kept them up, didn't he? He went on a brilliant run. They had some amazing results. That 3-2 game where they were 2-0 down at half time and stuff, he changed everything and kind of got them back into it. So there is a pedigree there, but there's also the other side of it where Frank Lampard's teams can look incredibly disjointed, unorganised, defensively, all over the place. So, you know, it comes with the same risk as anybody else. And then Pascal Janssen, you look into that a wee bit more, and I don't think there's a massive swell over there to try and keep him at AZ Alkmaar. I think that kind of speaks volumes for me at times. You know, if you go and look at a manager and fans, and the word coming out of that country is, you know, we don't want him to go, and it's not like that with Pascal Janssen. So why is that would be the question I would ask straight away around that. Marcelo Gallardo is a sensational name to be linked with. Let's be truthfully honest, the job he done at River Plate was absolutely incredible. The style of football, the way that he orchestrates himself. I said on Sunday night that he's the kind of name that we should be looking at and thinking outside the box. And I still stand by that. Whether or not it's remotely possible, given the jobs that he's turned down, I'm not sure. But that's the kind of gravitas that we need to be looking at. We need to be thinking outside the box and at least try and ask the question. Go and ask the question of, are you interested? The same as Graham Potter, are you interested? No, I want too much money, or I'm not interested. Coming, absolutely fine. But I'm a wee bit like what people said on the comments there, that Kevin Muscat, and they put Frank Lampard and things in that. It's a very easy link. It's a very easy option for this board. And the last couple of appointments, albeit more or less, Gio was universally popular. Everybody wanted Gio. I think that's fair.
Yep.
There was a high percentage of people that wanted Michael Beale. Maybe I would say 70, 80%. There was a good, maybe, you know, there is 20, 25% of people that didn't want Michael Beale. It was certainly more vocal than it was for Gio at any point. And I think that guys like Muscat, Lampard and things, possibly the easy option. I think we need to think and take our time and look outside the box. Go and put it out. See who's actually interested. Go and ask questions of the bigger names and see if they would be willing to come and what we would have to do. Marcelo Gallardo, you know, might not be possible in any realms, but at least go and try and see if we can speak to him, see what he would demand, and that's the kind of appointment that could revolutionise everything, because he would certainly change up this club and change up the direction, the quality of football and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that Kevin Muscat doesn't play a good brand of football. I'm not saying that Pascal Janssen does either. So there's obviously going to be a lot behind it, Derek. But I'm kind of, at this point, I'm reluctant to throw my kind of weight behind anybody. I'm interested in seeing where it's going to go. You always get a feeling. I said this on Sunday night. It wouldn't take long before you get the front runners and the front runners emerge. And I think that's kind of where it is at the moment in time. The interesting thing is that when Graham Potter was linked with it, he more or less came out immediately, I think, and distanced himself. I think that's the kind of word that's happened there. Marcelo Gallardo's not done that yet. So I find that potentially interesting as well, because for somebody that's, turned down these jobs and so highly thought of, if a story like that comes out from a kind of worthy source, I would say yesterday, TNT Sports, etc., then it wouldn't have been quick to be denied, I think. So there's maybe something there that's worth looking into. So as I said, like, Rangers will be an attractive job, I think, for any manager. A lot of people have talked about the money side of it and would there be a budget and things available. This goes back to what happened in the summer. If you think we maybe spent 13, 14 million, we more or less took the same amount back in also. So I don't think there'll be restrictions there on potential budgets for a manager. He would certainly have money to play with, and he would be able to kind of make changes and things which are needed. So I'm more of a situation here, Derek, where I would like to be excited by what we do. Don't want to watch us do the most obvious and easy thing, which kind of rhymes a wee bit with the comments, as I said. Let's see what's truly out there. Let's ask some questions. Let's search a wee bit far and wide. And I would like to be excited. I'd like to see us show a wee bit of adventure.
Yeah, some other names that have been suggested. Thanks to subscriber Graham over living in Belgium for messaging me earlier. And he suggested the former Bruges and Monaco manager, Philippe Clement. He says he's not been talked about, won 3 titles in Belgium, was sacked in the summer from Monaco. He says that he played good football in Belgium with Bruges. There's another one nobody's really mentioned. Thanks to Buzzlot for the donation, the £2 donation to the channel. But he says Muscat would be already transparently copying them. So he is not on board the Kevin Muscat train. And there's a few other names mentioned to me here. Andrew Webster says, what about thoughts on Ryan Lowe, Derek? Preston North End manager. Actually, used to interview him a great deal when he was appointed manager of Bury. He was a player manager there. That was his first job. Talks a good game. I like him, but I don't think he's ready for the Rangers job at this point in time. He's doing a decent job at Preston, did well at Plymouth Argyle, and I think he's got potential to do well. But at this point in time, I would be amazed to see Ryan Lowe in the dugout at Ibrox. And Scott Kearney says, what about Wilder? I've seen Chris Wilder also linked as well in the betting list. I see Stevie scrunch his face up there. Maybe Chris Wilder a few years ago when he had his Sheffield United side rampaging up to the Premier League down south, with John Lundstrom at the heart and John Fleck at the heart of that midfield and the overlapping centre backs. But at this point in time, I don't think Chris Wilder's stock is very high, to be honest, and I would be also amazed if he were to pitch up at Ibrox. Joshua.
Yes, sorry, I was just taking a breath. But what was I going to say? I just think it's an important point to reiterate that although there's not an obvious candidate, I think that can also work to the favour of the Rangers board. It's a strategist's job, isn't it, to look into the future. And the last couple of appointments, it would have been more difficult to make not out of the blue, but you know what I mean, a kind of left field appointment. Stevie's distracted me down there, to make a left field appointment, but this time I think there is the somewhat added benefit of the fact that you can go and make a really bold and brave appointment, because there isn't that obvious. Not that you should be making an appointment to appease the fan base, you should be making the correct appointment for the club, but we all know the political aspects come into it. Also, what Stevie's saying there, Rangers is an attractive proposition because it's Rangers, but also because, let's be honest, where does every manager want to get? The Premier League. playing in European football, playing on the doorstep of the Premier League. In the same way that you'd attract a player like a Raskin or a Cantwell, it's different when it's a manager. But there is, although it's a difficult time to come into the club, an ambitious manager, I think it's an attractive proposition for him as well. And maybe leads us to talk a bit about the sporting director role, Derek, and the importance of that and how that comes into the context of Rangers searching for a manager without one at the moment.
Yeah, well, how important is that, Josh? Your piece, of course, originally published back in the summertime, discussing the need for that sporting director. We're now into October, and there is none appointed as yet. Do Rangers need to get a sporting director in first before a manager? How important is it that they sort that situation out?
I think when Ross Wilson left and when Ross Wilson was at the club, the focus was so much on recruitment, and the sporting director will change. There's two pieces on the website if you want to go and read them. One is an interview. I kind of mentioned this yesterday. I think there's two different. One's a bit of an opinion piece. One's an interview with an industry expert on what the role of a sporting director does. It will differ from club to club. Some might be more of a head of recruitment. Some might have complete autonomy over all departments. I think the recruitment thing is such a focus that there at any club. I don't think there's going to be a sporting director who very rarely might handpick the players himself. It's always going to be a degree of committee, a degree of communal decision. Decisions aren't black and white, and I guess when you're going to make a football signing, there's always going to be risk attached. But I think we always in football want to have a singular scapegoat or a singular figure to blame, and that's worked against Michael Beale this season because he's not a director of football in the way that Gio did last season. So I think that sporting director discussion has come up more in the fact now that you've signed a lot of players for one style, which I think is a completely valid criticism. You've signed players suited to a managerial style who I still think there's redeeming qualities within a lot of them, like the likes of Raskin and Cantwell. Cifuentes is still to come good, but I think they're all profiles who can work in a different style of football. It's not the only signed players to do that, but it's quite moulded to Beale. I think that the more obvious need for a sporting director and what's obvious just now. And it's actually, I'm going to read the quote out that Michael Beale said, if I can find it, when he was asked about it back in sometime last season. It was when there was kind of this discussion, do Rangers need a sporting director? Do they not? If Beale's had such a focus on recruitment, is it better to just let a manager have their type of players? And he said, and a sporting director, technical director, whatever you want to term it, I think it's about the safeguarding of the club. I think it's someone who oversees departments, one of those departments being the first team. It safeguards the club in terms of future management signings and making sure the strategy from the board is put in place. So as we've kind of already talked about, Derek, I think with the short lifespan of managers, sporting directors should be able to offer that continuity. They should be able to offer continuity between managerial appointments, between transfer window to transfer window. They should be the one that I guess is at points going against the manager's will to make sure that the squad retains value and make sure that what happened last season at Rangers, where you lose players who should have been sold perhaps at earlier junctures in their career, that then do not run down their contract, and therefore you lose the value of your squad. And I think that's, we don't really know, I guess, because Ross Wilson was quite, he wasn't really in the public limelight, or he didn't do any interviews for maybe the last year or so of his Rangers career. So it's difficult to know exactly what his remit was, what he was responsible for. But I think just generally, if you're looking at the role of a sporting director, a technical director, it should be to provide continuity. It should be to safeguard the club's interest between when it goes manager to manager, when players are trying to run down or running down their contracts, even though that's more of a common thing in football. So it needs to be about the long-term view. And I think getting out of the viewpoint of just arguing about should a sporting director be there because are they going to have too heavy a hand on recruitment, that safeguarding of the club between windows means that hopefully you don't find yourself in a position like Rangers have this season or last season. So I think it is really important to have that type of figurehead in a club. And as we've said kind of repeatedly over the last couple of days, Derek, there's a reason that all the biggest and best run clubs in the world have that type of model. You know, they don't all just have it to appease the fan base. It's a model that I think works through a variety of different contexts, through people who have different job remits. But yeah, there's a reason that all the big clubs have a sporting director or a technical director.
Yeah. Dana Life says Mark Allen's still in a job. People, he has just joined Steven Gerrard over at Al Ettifaq over in Saudi Arabia. So there you go, buddy. That is an update on there. Stevie, sporting director of Rangers, paid the price for not appointing one in the summertime?
What I would say is, Derek, surely Paul Mitchell should be
well. Interesting to say that. Uncle Dave says that he's recently looking for employment, isn't he?
There was some noises of him potentially Stevie, the Man United. I think it's Jim Ratcliffe, who's one of the parties interested by Man United. Yeah, I think he was one of the names that Paul Mitchell was attached to potentially going to. So I think maybe he's moving with a big job in hand. But he's a perfect example of the type of director of football, that model the Rangers should look for, I think.
We've been linked with him before. That's the only reason I bring his name up, because we have been heavily linked with him, perhaps prior to Ross Wilson coming in. It's just, listen, I can't sit here and say that we should have went down that route and that, because I've sat here and said previously that I wasn't overly convinced. But I think it's okay to say that I've listened to other people's viewpoints on it. I've listened to Joshua speaks about it. Obviously, I've read what he's written. We've got a piece on it today on our own blog website for lads that talks about it as well. So I'm willing to change my viewpoint slightly on whether or not we need a sporting director of football type figure. So yeah, I'm more leaning towards the fact of making that appointment. Also, it would be interesting to see if the board, Chris suggested this morning in his Rangers review piece that the board are now actively looking to make that appointment as well as a managerial one. And it'll be interesting to see that what order they might do that in. And that might, kind of affect the situation with Stephen Davis. We know that James Bisgrove spoke to a number of candidates already back in the summertime, because he's openly admitted that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe they've spoke to people and perhaps parked it, but there might be somebody that they've spoken to that they now think, right, well, he's actually ideal for the role. So it's an interesting one. You've got the obvious Craig Moore, Kevin Muscat link there, if they decided to go down the Kevin Muscat route. So it's one that I think now we'll go and make that appointment now. I think that's clear, because I think the board, I think the board have looked at this. They put trust in Michael Beale. It's not worked out. Hindsight is a lovely thing. I think many of us sat in the summer and said, well, look, he's identified good players before. He was involved in a lot of it. And he was, let's not rewrite history, Raskin, Cantwell, people in previous terms like Bassey and Aribo and stuff like that. So with that in mind, I think the board have said, right, okay, fine. And they went with it. But, Derek, as we spoke about the other night, there's going to be pressure on this board now. They're going to look, because you can do as much off the pitch for Rangers as you want. And we've done some good things, and I think the board have implemented some really good stuff. I think, the things that we've done off the field commercially and things like that all make sense. And I think, we're looking at safe standing and building on Ibrox and trying to increase capacity, doing stuff at training. I think that's all great, right? But see, ultimately, when it comes down to it, see, when it's this much of a mess on the pitch, nobody cares.
Exactly.
And you will not get any goodwill for what's going on off the pitch if it's just such a mess on it like it is.
Yeah.
I'll offer some context and a slight defence of the board in that way, that I think they're doing all right and the things that they're implementing is good. But I will offer no defence of what's went on footballing wise. And critically, that's what people will look at, and that's why they'll get criticised. So I can see them changing tack slightly from the summer of what they've already implemented and now pushing on with a sporting director of football. So whether or not I think it's a good thing, and as I said, my opinion on that has slightly changed, or not slightly, has changed. I've listened and I've read what Joshua said. I've read what other people have said, and I've listened to it. So I can see the value in that now, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest of whether or not they go down that route, Derek. And the other thing is, and to answer the other question of who might be available and stuff like that, that's not something I know about. I don't have any idea. Paul Mitchell obviously came up yesterday, having left Monaco, and it's a really interesting kind of thing because he'd been linked before. That's why I suggested that perhaps we should be going to ask that question and approaching. So, and when you talk about Man United takeover and things, Joshua, the amount of time that might still take, perhaps it's still possible to go and ask that question. I'm not sure. But he's the kind of thing that I would be going to, the kind of name that would excite, I think, if he came in. So yeah, the sporting director role is a certainly interesting one. As I say, Joshua's piece is quite interesting on it. I've not been on the train before. I know Johnny's been very vocal about needing it. We've spoken on here on this show before.
Yeah, just after the summer, I think it's been revved up, Stevie.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously because evidence provides you with
a disaster
with how things have went. Like, you know, Derek, I think it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and say, no, we don't need one. And
yeah,
it's okay to look at evidence that's been provided and say, well, hold on, folks. I didn't really think that was necessary. I was willing to kind of see where it went. Hey, it's not worked. Let's view tact and let's change. I think that's fair. You know, and I think that's only obvious. I think it would be worse if I sat here and said, well, what's really been wrong with it? So, no, I'm willing to kind of look at that and think, yeah, there is a value to the chain of thought that we should be going down that route.
Yeah. Just to bust a bubble on Paul Mitchell, William with some inside info here on the Rangers review says he's waiting on the United job, recently bought a house in Manchester. So there you go. And nice words from Peggy McPhail. She says, good morning, boys. Great articles on Rangers review, Joshua and Stevie. Thank you very much, Peggy. Yeah, fantastic content on the site, folks. If you want to take advantage and read the articles on the sporting director from Joshua, Stevie's opinion piece on the Michael Beale sacking, Chris Jack has got an excellent piece on there as well on the Beale news. Also, then head over to rangersreview.co.uk. If you haven't subscribed already, it's /subscribe. We've got 2 fantastic offers on £18 for an entire year or just £4 for 4 months. Okay, that'll do us there. Bumper show today. Thank you to Stevie and to Joshua. Chris Jack is jetting. I think he's currently in the air, heading over to Cyprus as we speak. So when we next get him on, I think we'll get him on tomorrow. He'll be over sunning himself in Cyprus over there. So looking forward to that, and hopefully Rangers have a successful trip over there, led by Stephen Davis and Alex Ray. I'm intrigued to see how they get on. I think Rangers will get an upturn. Just have a feeling in my bones we'll get a reaction from the players on Thursday night. I certainly hope so. Right, guys, also on the website, on the YouTube channel for the members, there's the Aris insight into Thursday night's opponents. I spoke with a Cypriot football podcaster, Stell, who was absolutely fantastic. Gives a bit of insight not only into Aris but Cypriot football as well, which is mental to say the least. So go and check it out, and plenty more to come your way as well. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.